Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Mishal Saed, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and really what those strategies are driving their future growth. Today, we're thrilled to have Talha Siddiqui joining us. He is the founder and managing director of Brillionhouse Digital. Talha leads a digital marketing agency that empowers small to mid-sized businesses with authentic branding, data-driven digital campaigns, and go-to-market strategies, drawing on his multi-year experience from various roles in different organizations. We'll explore his founding story today, really how Brillionhouse Digital is transforming brand narratives and what the vision looks like for really scaling this dynamic firm. So with that being said, Talha, welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm glad to be here.
Absolute pleasure having you on. Take us back to the beginning. What specific problem within the digital marketing landscape, perhaps around generic branding or ineffective digital campaigns, inspired you to actually launch the company?
That's a good question. It's a good place to begin. To be honest, I jumped into client-related work and business scaling, growth hijacking, whatever you want to call it, in college. So I was really good at writing, and I realized that I could make some money off of it. And I started writing essays for all of my classmates. And the more essays that I wrote, I guess the further my reach, my scope became. And eventually business owners and entrepreneurs, friends who were starting businesses started asking me to help them with copywriting. Whether that was like branding for the website with copywriting or just copywriting for like scripts or video outlines, I wasn't too picky about, but I fell in love with the feeling of conveying a message and then having people take a specific action from it. When you're writing essays for people, the action that you're trying to evoke is like getting a good grade, prove your argument, make sure all your bases are covered. And then when I jumped into branding and business related work, I realized the message that we communicate is everything. The story that we tell is everything. And all of that started with writing. So yeah, we do a bunch of stuff now. We've kind of grown quite a bit in the last 5 years now. Wow, time flies. But yeah, the basis was always messaging, and messaging very naturally leads into branding. Branding is your story. So really storytelling was how I got into it. And I just realized that so many businesses out there were bottlenecked by their own inability to convey their message. So the better I got at that, the more money my clients made. That's where I started.
Yeah, that's incredible. A lot of your roots was really starting out in the copywriting space and evolving from there to really create narratives for a lot of businesses that, you're absolutely right. They overlook that aspect when it comes to building their brand awareness and getting the messaging out there. So on that front, I'd love for you to get into the nuts and bolts for our listeners today. Walk us through really the core offer, how you generate revenue. I know there's branding, digital marketing, a lot of varied offerings, but what is primarily what you do and how do you structure it for some of the clients that you do work with?
So I would say the core offer is essentially an in-house on-demand team, right? So realize that a lot of business owners, they need a bunch of stuff. They need a bunch of services. They need a lot of help to scale. They can't do everything by themselves. So whether that's like getting a brand developer or a web developer or a copywriter, a videographer, a social media manager, there were so many like bits and pieces that they have to go around collecting up. And it just seemed very inefficient. And I know obviously there are marketing agencies that offer in-house services, and that's nothing new. But the thing that made it all worth it for us was like keeping that story under one roof. If there's one person or one unit responsible for conveying the message, you have a lot less room for error and or miscommunication or saying something here but it meaning and implying something else, but you're not aware because there's so many people involved or so many vendors you have to deal with. So our kind of core offering was very much so just having an in-house team with every single skill you could possibly think of under the sun on the same page, on the same team. We would have account managers that would have meetings with our clients. We would convey that to the rest of the team. The team would then break it down step by step. It was super optimized after a few years, especially. And it just became speed to lead. It became like how quickly we could go to market. That was like the next frontier, right? If we're already solving and alleviating business owners' problems from having to go seek out each individual vendor and we're bringing it all together for them, it's not only a one-stop solution, but it's following Apple's business model where everything is dealt with in-house. So it's the most efficient, the most secure, the most well designed, right? We really took inspiration from them and just applied it into the marketing and development landscape. And that's like our core offering. Obviously, lead generation and traffic and revenue growth, all this stuff comes, especially if you have a very strong story. So the
Mhm.
stronger your story, the more money you'll make. That's what ends up winning. That's our highest point of leverage for any business, for any organization that we work with. It comes down to the framing of that story, the positioning of that story, and how you seek to include the audience into that. Most recently, we worked with a nonprofit that was actually raising money for Palestine and humanitarian aid efforts going on over there.
Wow.
And just in one day alone, we generated almost $200,000 worth of donor revenue. And that was because we had the right videos, the right people, the right speakers, even the right people to do fundraising for us. We had all of those people under one umbrella, under one story, and the audience spoke for itself. Everybody showed out. We had more than 500 people in attendance. And again, it always comes back down to that story. Yeah, revenue growth is directly correlated with our ability to scale the message. Not only scale the message, but also pull it out from the founders as well. Because not everybody knows what their story is fully, right? So
Yeah.
you might have to go through kind of like a process like this where you're learning and you're educating yourselves and you're paying attention to the details that the business owner might not even necessarily connect or correlate with one another. So it's really pattern recognition and storytelling. And I think that if you have those two key principles, you can make a ton of money.
I love that. And especially with what you're doing, it sounds like very philanthropic as well from that lens point, working with some of the nonprofits. And as far as really some of the industries that you work with, are you agnostic in that sense, or do you have an ideal client avatar on the SMB side of things? What does that look like as far as your ICP goes?
We were very industry agnostic for a while just because we didn't want to put up barricades, right? As we're growing, as we're scaling. We also recommend this for some of our customers as well. It depends on the industry that they're in. But now we've nestled quite comfortably in high ticket offers or service-based businesses, particularly in finance or real estate. Those are the people who they tend to drive the most benefit from having the most clear story.
Mm.
And there's 1,000 real estate agents, there's 1,000 property developers, there's 1,000 CPA firms. But what makes you stick out and speak directly to your core audience of paying customers is how clear and understandable your story really is. And that's everything from every touch point, every customer touch point, from your social media, your LinkedIn profile to your website profiles, the way that user data is captured and how we follow up with those people, especially if they opt in to marketing from us. It's all just adding bits and pieces of that puzzle to
Mm.
have a complete picture at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. So, really, with that being said, a lot of that emphasis is on building the foundation as far as what a brand stands for at the end of the day, what the narrative looks like, and then building on that, maybe looking into how they can generate leads on the GTM side of things, what that next step looks like. Yeah, really setting that foundation in place for a lot of the businesses that you work with. So, as far as scaling goes, what does that vision look like for you as a founder, that next step, especially with your fulfillment model? From what it sounds like, it's very customized and tailored per the business that you work with, and there's maybe
Mhm,
like an inherent cap on the number of clients you can take. How are you thinking
mhm.
about productization on the offer side so that you can start to scale and keep things manageable? What's that next step look like for you as a founder?
Hiring, a lot of hiring. Yeah, we definitely need to grow much faster than we are because we have actually turned down a bit of business because we just weren't able to digest it all at once. There was too much going on. Yeah, and if you add a couple of problems in there, which you pretty much should factor in because you're going to run into problems at some point, it dramatically affects your timeline for that project, which then cascades to every other project. So right now, what I'm trying to do is hire a lot more account managers and sales managers.
Mm.
So the only thing that I haven't done is pretty much door to door, and increasingly now that's becoming a more important thing on my task list, just
Mhm.
because I'm realizing the total opportunity value that's out there that I'm
Mhm.
not tapped into, especially living in a city like Houston or Austin or Dallas, for example. There's millions of businesses, and not all of them are on social media in the way that we sometimes expect them to be. For our business, for our industry, word of mouth is very powerful. And if you have a contact or a business relationship or a point of contact in a business as well, that sale process becomes infinitely easier. Like I can essentially cut out, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I can cut out a lot of the services that I offer to our clients when we're seeking our own clients. It's a bit of a different process. It's like not getting high off your own supply in a way. So that model tends to work pretty well for us. And we have done a lot of marketing, we've done a lot of influencer stuff as well. We've tried all sorts of things, but
Mhm.
nothing quite converts like you just walking into a business, explaining who you are, what you do, and then staying in contact with them for 2 weeks. That conversion rate is actually way higher than I had initially assumed it would be. So yeah, I'm actually looking for, I guess, door-to-door salesmen almost. Obviously, they're going to do a bit of research. We have a list that we can go off of and
Mhm.
extrapolate data out of, but really sending people in person with a little welcome gift. This is something that we're working on in the background right now. Even if it's like a hat and a t-shirt and a flyer or something, put it in a nice box that's branded with our company and just go drop it off. We think that there's a lot more room for happiness in the world, even in business, especially in business. So yeah, we were wanting to do some type of gift box type of deal, especially for our really well qualified clients. So there's a handful of businesses that I'm trying to secure still, especially in the oil and gas, real estate, and
Mhm.
CPA kind of industries.
Yeah.
There's some really big players and they don't respond the same way that a client for an HVAC system might respond.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more touch point. It's like this, honestly, like what you have going on here for closers.io is
Mhm.
very much like you're bringing a gift, right? Which is founders love to talk about the businesses. So you're turning it into a podcast, but then
Mhm.
you're also like kind of data mining. You're learning, you're absorbing, you're taking in all this information.
Yeah.
So that exact same model in it, I'm glad this is working out for you. This format works for you. We wanted to reverse engineer to just get a lot more high ticket clients
Mhm.
that are involved for a much longer time scape than just a year. They're
Mhm.
looking at 5 years or 10-year plans.
Yeah.
So we have 2 or 3 clients like that we've had for quite some time now. And we learned a lot on those projects as well. Yeah, that's one thing. And then obviously the account managers is just so we can take on more clients. So we can have that scalability unlocked within ourselves. Right now, it's me and my business partner. So, once you give us each 5 or 6 clients, that's like we're pretty much maxed out. That seems to be our threshold for. But if I
Mhm.
can hire 5 account managers, I can take
Mhm.
on 25 more clients. So
Yeah.
that's our biggest bottleneck at the moment.
Yeah. So, from what it sounds like from a fulfillment standpoint, having to really maintain that and really looking at, okay, how can we look at the revenue expansion side of things, build more LTV in our client base to where we can increase our capacity. And word of mouth seems to be some of the channels you guys are implementing or have been the most effective as far as the acquisition side of things, generating some of the leads for your own business. I actually want to get your thoughts on this because we talk a lot about it on the podcast, which is the idea of predictability when it comes to your business, right? Referrals are obviously the most high intent. They're the easiest to close in that sense, but not always the most predictable as far as what happens if referrals run out? What if that pipeline dries out? What does that
Mhm.
next step look like for you as far as building predictability? Are you looking at the paid ad side of things, cold outreach? What's your thought process and perspective on that as a founder?
In terms of what we would utilize for ourselves in
Yeah.
order to avoid, okay, so I think the best way around that is honestly, it's providing content, it's providing useful information and knowledge online. Because if you do that, your sales cycle is essentially running 24/7. In terms of LTV, so we also operate on a commission basis. So we have a monthly retainer, and then we also take 10 to 15% of all sales that we generate for your business. So in terms of LTV, if we do good work for even 1 or 2 clients, that can sometimes pay off for the entire year, right? If I generate $100,000 worth of business for a CPA firm, that's easy for them. And that's an extra 15, 20 grand for that month that we generated. So it's in terms of predictability, we don't have the most packed out pipeline or
Mhm.
like a month-long wait list. We don't have that stuff. That would be
Mhm.
good to have as well. But we have started implementing somewhat of an application process where you can't just hire us because you need us. You have to be sent by somebody. And it's very low key, very hush hush quiet. And that's not just because that's the most efficient way. That's just because we have other businesses that we're also concurrently running. It works out, right? If I have too much lead flow and my team is not ready to handle it, it's
Mhm.
still just as much of a bottleneck as if I had no lead flow. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, it doesn't make too much of a difference for me at present. And we have a pretty stringent application process. So there are certain criteria or qualifications, revenue benchmarks, things like that that we've started implementing, especially this year,
Mhm.
which nullifies a lot of our existing pipeline from before. So it's like we scaled up, we graduated a little bit. So in terms of those high ticket value customers, we
Mhm.
do have somewhat of a dry marketing pipeline, 100%. That's a very honest statement that I can tell you. But it's just that the business we do have is generating so much revenue
Mhm.
that we can just keep floating from month over month till I set account managers and sales managers in place. So I'm like, all right, cool. Now this can operate on its own. I don't need
Yeah.
to be as involved. I can just
Yeah.
crank up my ad spend, excuse me.
Yeah.
I can just crank up my ad spend and start qualifying for those people.
Yeah.
So that's my agenda. That's the time frame that I'm looking at. Sorry, time frame I didn't give you any details on. Time frame wise, I'm thinking like within the next 4 to 6 months should be a good, healthy place for me to shift a lot of my day-to-day responsibilities
Mm.
as a founder for this business to my team. But a lot of that is trial and error. There's a lot of
Mm.
people I end up going through or training with or trying to have them onboarded to the team.
Mm.
And 6 months later, they just don't really have that little spark that you really need to succeed in this kind of business.
Mm.
So it's been a bit of a push-pull situation, but I'm trying to get out of that as soon as possible.
Yeah, honestly, and is that more like with finding account managers, like more on the fulfillment side, finding reliable talent, or is it more on like the front end, like with sales, people who are reliable? I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on what that is.
It's definitely on the fulfillment side. Sales would just be a nice to have
Mm.
because not to toot my own horn, but I'm a very good salesman. So
Mm.
if I can get 10 leads on my dashboard, I can close probably 5 to 6
Mm.
pretty consistently. And then that's just because we have a very good disqualifier.
Mm.
And if you're not ready to step up to that plate, then there's no biggie. I'll just refer you to somebody else, maybe a smaller agency that I've worked with, or I'll still provide free value and free resources, but we wouldn't embark on that journey with them necessarily. So I
Yeah.
can close, but I can't fulfill at the same rate
Yeah.
because there's so many hands involved. There's
Mm.
copywriters, developers, designers, managers, marketers, researchers. Really getting the talent to level up would be step one. So that way
Mm.
I could probably continue to close for the next year without any issues, knowing that, okay, the team will take care of it. The team will take care of it. Everything's been optimized. So it's definitely in the fulfillment side. I feel like
Mm.
sales, I have another business where we deal with import export of architectural finishing materials. For that, we've opened up our new headquarters and our showroom and everything here in Houston.
Mm.
But all I need for that business is sales reps. I don't need anything else. Right? I have everything else taken care of. Everything's
Mm.
been built, designed, packaged, shipped,
Yeah.
ordered, received. So a lot of the time that I'm spending training sales reps is for that
Mm.
business.
Mm.
And it just so works out that the same industry that we're in on the marketing side, which is like finance and real estate, and developers and that kind of thing, those are the same people that we're pitching our architectural finishing materials to. And the sales reps have themselves naturally realized that, hey, every one of these companies that we look up online has a
Mm.
terrible website, have a terrible
Yeah.
brand presence. That's like they almost don't even care
Mm.
because they, to some extent, don't.
Yeah.
And our job is basically to come in, not only sell the architectural materials, but then build relationships with their core founding teams and say,
Mm.
hey, we actually know exactly how to scale your business as well. So it's like a two-pronged approach. And if everything works well, then I'm probably going to have the same sales reps that I've trained up for this other business to fill in and take care of some of the sales stuff on this side too. So it's fulfillment that I'm really stuck on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As far as that goes, that's the next step with scale is really growing that on the account management, client success side of things to where you can start to increase your capacity and then really look into some of those numbers. So what is
Mhm.
that vision as far as 6 to 12 months right now? What are you laser focused on as far as goals, revenue targets, performance milestones? Paint that picture for us here today.
Okay. Let's see. Next 6 to 12 months for this business, I would. So actually, this year I won an award or received an award from my alumni for the fastest growing business. So I made a list of the top 100 businesses
Mm.
by U of H alumni that have received the most revenue growth in their
Mm.
first 3 years of business. So we barely qualified. Some of those guys are huge companies or massive organizations, but we were like, I don't know, 90th out of 100. So we
Yeah.
just barely cracked that list. But it was a really cool experience. And I guess this is more of a personal goal, but there were a few people that I met who had more than one business on that list. So I was
Mhm.
like, wow, that's really impressive. You didn't just do it once, but you did it like 2 or 3 times. My personal goal is I want to have all three of my businesses on that list for
Mhm.
this next year for 2026. How I'm going to do that is basically for the agency, I just need to stay on the same trajectory that I'm at. For the architecture business, I need to basically increase my sales revenue or growth percentage about 3,000%. So that's something that I'm working on. But the marketing business is almost like a battery pack to power everything else. Having account managers, having sales managers in place for the marketing business doesn't just help the marketing business, it also helps all of our other businesses because it's going to be the same core team responsible for all of it. Yeah, I need to basically hire very fast and very good talent. And then I need to have my sales team split up and maybe take care of sales on the marketing side as well as the architecture side. So that way I can divvy up that load. And yeah, paid ads, definitely, I would give it another shot with an account manager and a sales manager in place because we just generated too many leads when we did it the other way. And I was like, okay, we spent $3,000 in ads. We generated so much money, but I can't scale with it. I can't keep up with that. Yeah.
And it could also come down to maybe the offer positioning as well, really niching down to where you can also scale in a manner that is sustainable once that's down pat, and then also allow yourself creating evergreen products. That might be another way to go as far as scaling this and really focusing on how I don't need to be involved in the fulfillment, or maybe from a hiring perspective, you can still keep a very lean team. As far as like hiring goes, what does that look like now? As far as what are some of the mediums, like if you could share with our listeners that you're doing to find account managers, exploring some of those ways, or is this like an area where you're still looking at ideas and strategies on really how you can find long-term talent to stay with your team? What's that experience like?
That's a good question. So I've dabbled here and there. Obviously, we've tried the kind of network approach where you just reach out to everyone you know and you see who's interested, and depending on their skill deficiency, you can train them up. That unfortunately takes a lot of time and resources, and then it's not guaranteed either. So then I shifted focus. All of 2023, I worked on building relationships with remote teams all over the world. So now I've got teams. Obviously, I've got my core team here, my guys here in Houston, but then I have a team in Australia, in Germany, and then two teams in India and Pakistan. And these are obviously cold people, like these massive teams. There's 150, 200 employees in these organizations. They have their sauce figured out and they can scale and replace and hire very quickly. So in order to avoid a lot of that stuff, I was just wanting to outsource to them. But then I started playing a lot of the quality control positions. So I basically just traded one responsibility for another. So now I have all this talent around the world that I can trust, that I do like their work for, but it takes too much iterating and optimizing and back and forth until it's to a degree that I'm finally comfortable with. So I've tried that too, and I still have those contacts. Those are still obviously businesses that I can reach out to and do any type of project with. But ideally, what ends up happening is I put up a job posting. LinkedIn is dead right now, but let's say I put up a LinkedIn job post and basically I can't lower my bar of entry. I have to increase it. I have to make it harder to work with us because that's how I'm going to pull and extract the best talent. And yeah, and we're willing to pay like their rates, the fair share for whatever work that they contribute to, but I just haven't really given it that proper attention that it needs. I might need a week or 2 weeks where I'm just going on like a hiring spree and I'm qualifying people and taking like 100 meetings that week. So that I haven't done that. I haven't really jumped off on that end, but I did experiment in all these other ways. I've never liked like Fiverr or Upwork or these kind of job listing sites where essentially anybody can show up and they can just have a swing at it. You don't actually know what to expect. Even past previous work, you're not sure if they actually completed it or if it was like a joint project with other people who maybe did more of the heavy lifting.
Right.
These are all like harsh realities that we had to deal with. Oh, okay, that dude has a really cool portfolio. He seems like he provides good value for the money he's charging. Oh, but 6 weeks later, it's like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. That's also an issue. And so that discourages us sometimes. We're like, all right, just we know how to do it better than everybody. So just keep doing that. And that's like that blind focus level view of just chugging forward. The problem with that, it becomes once you're that narrow-minded, it becomes very difficult to scale because you just get stuck back in the rope of things. So yeah, we've experimented quite a bit, but now I'm at this point where I'm like, all right, we need to hire proper guys who I don't have to teach anything to. If anything, they can teach me.
Yeah, finding other experts, even people who've scaled their own businesses or their own agencies, and now they're willing to be a part from an entrepreneurial perspective, work on another person's business and be involved in that, especially with the overhead and whatnot. As we do wrap up, a couple questions for the listeners, entrepreneurs tuning in. What's like the best piece of advice you would give to them about starting a digital marketing agency, especially those that are maybe on the edge? They're scared about taking that risk, walking away from like a stable 9 to 5. What would you leave on one last note?
If Yeah, this is a pretty common one. I hear it quite a lot. But if you're leaving your 9 to 5 and starting an agency for the sake of leaving your 9 to 5, then just be aware you're trading it for a 9 to 9.
Mm,
Be aware of that because you're going to put 3 to 4 times more effort or time or intention into making this thing successful than you probably initially realized. It's going to
mm,
take 3 to 4 times more of that.
mm,
And don't do it unless you really love it
mm,
because this isn't an industry where it's just a hobby, it's just like a passion that you're wanting to pursue. It's an industry that can have very real impacts and consequences for the clients that trust you.
yeah.
So, yeah, I would say do this if you love it, because if you love it, you'll do it
Mm,
for free until you get it right. And if
mm,
you're not willing to do that, it's not worth the opportunity costs for you
mm,
or for your customers that you'll eventually have. So
mm.
I don't know if that's more discouraging, but if that encourages you, then those listeners know that marketing is for them.
Yeah, 100%. And before we do wrap up, what's the best way for potential clients to get in touch with you and work with you over at Brilliant Digital House?
We actually have an application, and I can drop it here or give it to you or something, but it's just a type form where people can leave their information about us, their business, their growth opportunities, their time constraints, all this kind of stuff, where we can collect it all up. And
Mhm.
then one of our reps will basically go through all that data and follow up with you within the next 3 to 4 hours, pretty much. Yeah, it's a pretty strict application process,
Mhm.
but that's where we find the best results when people can fit that criteria, that mold that we're designed to really help fulfill. Yeah, if people are in the real estate or financial kind of industries and they are seeking more than revenue
Mhm.
growth, scalability type initiatives, Brilliant House is here for them.
Amazing. On that note, thank you so much for joining us today on Founders Future and sharing your incredible story with really starting in the copywriting space and now helping brands find their message and creating narratives and storytelling. Really incredible stuff, especially everything from what you were saying earlier with Palestine and working with nonprofits as well. That's super meaningful. Yeah, we're wishing you all the success going into this year, and hopefully we can have you back on the show, even do a part 2 and find out a little bit more about what's changed as far as fulfillment goes and what's that looking. So to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, of course, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find some more resources and insights over at closers.io, of course, where we're dedicated to helping businesses scale through trained appointment setters and world-class marketing and sales systems. So until then, everyone, keep climbing, and we'll see you all in the next one.